Max Payne was a commercial success and a critical success, selling over 5 million copies and receiving numerous awards from outlets, which is high praise considering how many standout games released in 2001. A pretty much unheard of developer at the time became famous overnight because of this game. I've already covered why Max Payne is one of the greatest games ever made, so it's easy to see why the game, and in turn Remedy, became who they are today because of it. Shortly after the release of Max Payne, Rockstar Games, creators of the Grand Theft Auto series and later Red Dead Redemption, offered to buy the license and have Remedy work on a sequel to Max Payne. Now, Rockstar may not have been involved with the development of Max Payne, however, they did make the console ports of the game. Remedy would have twice the budget and resources for the sequel, but a smaller development window. In September 2003, Take-Two announced that Max Payne 2: The Fall of Max Payne would release on the 14th of October 2003. And it didn't go as planned. Which isn't the game's fault. Max Payne 2 received similar reception and acclaim as the first game, and the game was praised for its technological advancements and its deeper story. But the game didn't sell very well. Remedy has confirmed that Max Payne 1 and 2 sold a total of 7 million copies, and since we know 5 million of that is Max Payne 1, that means Max Payne 2 only sold 2 million copies. The game did make a profit, but considering it's a sequel to a popular game made with twice the budget and it had the Rockstar name attached to it, it was puzzling that it didn't sell more. My theory as to why it didn't sell as much was the lack of advertising. But we may never know why it didn't sell as well. Not that it was a big problem, Remedy was satisfied with the game they made, and Rockstar kept releasing games that made much more money than Max Payne 2. What's also odd is that Max Payne 2 isn't as popular as the first game and is talked about much less. But those who do talk about it give it nothing but praise. I did a 50-minute video in 2018 talking about how much I love this game. So why am I making another video on this game? Well, first of all, it's Max Payne 2, it's my favorite game of all time, and I could talk about it all day, every day. Second, whilst I'm happy with the video I made in 2018, I do feel it is lacking in comparison to my more recent videos, and a game such as this deserves more respect. So, to celebrate Max Payne 2's birthday, I'm going to explain why Max Payne 2 is the perfect sequel. At first glance, Max Payne 2 may seem as if it plays like Max Payne 1, and that isn't really a wrong assessment, considering that Max Payne 2's gameplay and mechanics are built from the first game and are refined much more. Most of the weapons from Max Payne 1 are brought over to this game with some enhancements. First, the obvious change is that weapons are more accurate in this game. In the first game, bullets would go in the general direction you were shooting, whereas in this game they go exactly where you shoot, meaning it's easier to land headshots. You can now also dual-wield Desert Eagles, which is really awesome. It is insanely overpowered, but they don't have as much ammo as the Berettas, so it kind of balances itself out. The jackhammer has been replaced with the Striker and works mostly the same way. The MP5 has a scope that you can zoom in and out, allowing for combat at longer distances. The M4 carbine and Kalashnikov have been added to the game and are very fun, but both weapons behave very similarly, and thus I think having both was redundant. Otherwise though, they're fun to use during shootouts. Also, another addition is that you can now shoot whilst jumping in the air, which speeds up the pace of combat and allows the player to be a bit more aggressive. Every weapon, whether it be pistols, shotguns, SMGs, machine guns and snipers, are all very impactful and fun to use, and they all serve different purposes. Berettas have more ammo than Desert Eagles but don't do as much damage. The Striker has a faster fire rate than the sawed-off shotgun or Spaz 12, but runs out of ammo faster and doesn't do as much damage. The dual Ingrams have the fastest fire rate in the game and kill almost anything instantly, but run out faster than the MP5, and the MP5 is more effective for range. The game has different types of weapons in each category, and they're all useful in some way, and you'll need to figure out which one will help you clear the specific room you're in right now. The weapons in the game are all very good. The main additions to Max Payne 2's gameplay are more based on the mechanics than the sandbox. One of the best changes is that Max can now melee and throw grenades and molotovs without changing weapons. In Max Payne 1, these throwables were useful, but since you had to give up your current weapon to use them, it meant that it wasn't worth using them most of the time. Whereas in Max Payne 2, melee and throwables are binded to a different button, making it more viable in combat. Another change is that you can shoot dodge infinitely. In the first game, it would cost bullet time to shoot dodge, whereas here it doesn't. So even when your bar is empty, you can still use it, which is effective for dodging bullets and jumping into enemies. Also, you still get bullet time for killing enemies, but it does slowly recharge over time now. Jumping is also more useful in this game since jumping into enemies stuns them for a short while, making them defenseless. The main addition to Max Payne 2's gameplay is the bullet time reload. The more kills you get in Max Payne 2, the faster Max moves during bullet time. The world will slow down, but Max will still be moving at the same speed, and when the hourglass turns yellow, Max will do this stylish reload. This is probably the best addition to Max Payne 2 because it means as long as you keep getting kills, you can basically avoid normal reloads, which takes longer. It's also really awesome to see time slow to a crawl whilst bodies, bullets and shell casings fly through the air. It speeds up the gameplay and gives Max Payne 2 a far more aggressive playstyle than the first game, as the player is always encouraged to keep pressing forward, even if they're outnumbered greatly. The level design in Max Payne 2 is also really great. There are more paths to take in the levels, more secret areas, and the combat encounters work really well in giving the player plenty of space to go crazy. Each level and location is unique as well, and they all feel very different in tone, atmosphere, and just the way you progress through it. My favorite level in the entire series is the $1 million question, where you keep going up and down apartment levels and bursting through rooms and painting the room with blood and bullet holes. There's something satisfying about taking a clean and nice apartment and then making it a bloodbath. Plus, it works great as a contrast to the previous levels where you were fighting in Max's old, dirty, rundown apartment building. And both are apartment buildings, but they feel so different they don't feel like the same type of building. There's the funhouse level in which you play through an over-exaggerated noir York City. The warehouse works as a good starting level, giving the player plenty of wide and claustrophobic areas to get used to the mechanics. The construction site has the most variety out of any location in the game. You have the usual run around like crazy and kill everyone, but you also get to play as Mona and provide sniper fire cover for Max. The hospital is great because you're always at a disadvantage for the level and so you can't be as careless. The vodka restaurant is the nightclub from their first game, reskinned, and it's fun to see how much the place has changed in 2 years. Plus, the level has a lot of fun ways to traverse. The streets have shootouts everywhere through buildings, the roads, and guys coming out everywhere. You even get to team up with criminals for a bit. And the final levels at the mansion are tense and work amazing as a way to close the game. And just like the first game, each level in Max Payne 2 has an insane amount of interactivity with the environment. Pretty much every object can be interacted with in some way, and sometimes something fun may happen when you do. The NPCs in this game have more personality too. In the police station you can talk to pretty much everyone there, and you get unique conversations with them.
I want to report a crime.
You've come to the right place.
Okay, so my boyfriend, the loser jerk, sits on his ass all day and keeps playing these stupid video games. You know, stupid Dick Justice and stuff. Doesn't go to work, gives me no thought.
Unfortunately, being a jerk is not a crime.
No, I wasn't finished. I'm getting to it. So I got real sick of it and threw the television out of the window. It was mine. I can do whatever I want with it, right?
As long as no one got hurt.
That's what I told him. He's my ex, really. But now the sicko's threatening to kill me. That's a crime, right? He's been playing those video games an awful lot. Makes him a very good shooter. Holding that controller's like holding a gun, they say in the news. You gotta help me. I fear for my life.
Okay, miss. Sit down for a moment and we'll take your name and address and see what we can do about it.
Okay.
Did you hear that? Guns don't kill people. Video games kill people. Jesus. Welcome to New York City.
They even get annoyed at you when you break the AC or turn off the television.
Hey, nice going, Payne. Good job. If it was still summer, you'd be a dead man right about now.
You better stop praying we won't get an Indian summer, Payne.
Or in the rundown apartment, some of the residents will assist you throughout the level, and you can bring some of them with you. You can even tell them to follow you or stand still if you want.
I'll take care of this. You stay put.
Okay, I'll wait here.
Come on, we're moving.
Thought you'd never ask.
On second thought, you better stay back.
Ah, right. Why the hell would I risk my life for this? Anyway, huh?
I need you to cover me.
Say no more. Once a cop, always a cop.
Early in the game, you also meet Mike the cowboy, who works for Vlad. He helps you get through the level and then betrays you later in the game. However, if he dies or if you kill him, he won't appear later. If you destroy the cameras in the $1 Million Question, then Mona will scold you for it. You can also make a bunch of phone calls in the game, and then find the machine where the calls were recorded. When you walk across this catwalk in the funhouse, you can hear it creak, which foreshadows it breaking later. There are a bunch of different TV shows to watch, all of which parallel the story in the game in some way. Dick Justice is a parody version of Max Payne.
Stranded in the dark and violent night, Dick Justice, a lone, hard-boiled fugitive cop, framed for the murder of his wife, on a quest for vengeance through the criminal underworld in the city's heart of darkness. The rain was coming down like all the angels in heaven had decided to take a piss at the same time. In a situation like mine, you can only think in metaphors.
Address Unknown parallels Max's nightmares.
I was hiding in a cheap motel. One night, I woke to a knock at my door. Someone slipped a note under the door. It was a clue.
Lords and Ladies parallels the rivalry between Max and Vlad.
Maybe we can yet solve this peacefully. Have at thee! No! My lord! Brother! What have you done? Brother! You have slain me.
And there's also a bunch of news broadcasts and commercials you can watch. There's even a reference to Super Mario Bros.
That's odd.
There are a bunch of details you can find that show how lonely and empty Max was after Max Payne 1. If you don't immediately attack enemies and stay hidden, you can listen to unique dialogue. In fact, there's some sections where you can be a bit stealthy. This one guy tries to trick you into a trap and you can go along with it, or you can kill him early. If you're quick enough going through Max's apartment levels, then you can actually see Mona running away. There are so many minor details in this game, and it makes each level feel densely packed. They feel like real places because everything can be interacted with. Even something as simple as turning on taps or flushing the toilets can be done. It makes Max Payne 2's levels feel immersive rather than just a window dressing for the combat encounters. Speaking of which, Max Payne 2 was one of the first games to use Havoc physics, and they are put to great use here. Enemies will now ragdoll instead of having death animations, and items around the environment will get destroyed or blasted around during gunfights. It looks awesome and makes the gunfights feel more impactful when the environment is getting destroyed as bullets and explosions fly everywhere. Bodies will literally fly into the ceiling because of how insane the physics are in this game. No other shooting game since Max Payne 2 has had physics this insane. At least none that I can think of. Maybe Fear comes close. Genuinely, it's really hard to find problems with this game. The controls are smooth as butter, the weapons are all awesome to use, the levels are unique and have an insane amount of interaction that most games, even today, do not have. The physics make the action more insane, the bullet time now encourages a more aggressive and overall more fun playstyle, the pacing is done extremely well, with the game knowing the perfect times when to give the player a break. There is a lot of variety in the gameplay, and the bullet time reload is one of the most satisfying mechanics of all time. If I did have any criticisms, sometimes the game doesn't give you enough ammo for certain weapons. A minor annoyance, but there are times where I want to use a weapon, but I only have like 30 bullets for it, and it kind of irks me a bit. Really, the only problem I have with Max Payne 2 is that the gameplay can be a little bit too easy at times. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of challenging moments in the game, but with the updated bullet time, you can be seriously overpowered sometimes. The dynamic difficulty from Max Payne 1 is back, but at the same time it's not as aggressive, and it's kind of useless. Like, Max Payne 1's difficulty wasn't the best balance, but I do kind of like how brutally hard that game can be at times, and I wish Max Payne 2 had a similar feel. I've heard some people say they didn't like Mona's levels, but I disagree. I think they give plenty of variety to the game and break up the pace pretty well. Max and Mona play the same mechanically, so it's nice that their levels are unique. Really, I do not have much to complain about with Max Payne 2. It expanded upon the original extremely well with all the new additions, and they're all welcome additions. This game holds up really well and does not feel dated at all. Sure, the animations do sometimes have that 2003 jank, but the game controls better because of it, so it's a worthwhile sacrifice. Max Payne 2 is a masterpiece, just based purely on its gameplay. However, Max Payne 1 wasn't just loved because of its gameplay. The storytelling propelled the game into the gaming landscape, at a time when storytelling in games was still in its infancy. Max Payne 2 may have beaten its predecessor in the gameplay department, but to truly be the perfect sequel, it has to improve in the storytelling department. Max Payne had a simple premise, but was held up by a main character that viewed the world and situation he was in an interesting way by always speaking in metaphors and drawing comparisons to mythology. The game also focused on the psychological aspects of the character to show how he viewed the twisted world he's in and the past that haunts him. The comic panel cutscenes gave the game the feel of a graphic novel, and in turn made the cutscenes timeless. They still look just as great now as they did 20 years ago. The side characters all had unique personalities, and Max would interact with them in interesting and unique ways. And there was a lot of mystery surrounding as to why Max's family was killed in the first place. Max Payne is remembered just as much for its storytelling as the bullet time. Max Payne 2 picks up 2 years later. After getting his revenge, Max was empty, with no real purpose or reason to go on, yet he did anyway. He did nothing but think about the events of the first game for all that time, and Mona especially. Thinking she was dead, but wondered why a body never turned up. But lo and behold, he runs into her in a way that mirrors how they last met.
Mona, looking good.
Max, we gotta stop meeting like this.
Mona?
Max, we gotta stop meeting like this.
Something Max Payne 2 does more than the first game is jump around time. The game starts off at the end in the manor with the final cutscene out of context and manipulated. The game then flashes back to the beginning of the third act, showing Max responsible for the murder of Detective Winterson. Then the game flashes back to where the actual game begins. The noir tone and style of storytelling is much more apparent in this game, and it works really well. We know Winterson is going to die, but the reasons as to how and why keeps you engaged throughout. What will cause the downfall between her and Max, and how did they go from partners to enemies? The fact that you're seeing future events out of context keeps you guessing as to what is going on and how we'll get from point A to Z. It's a really great way to start the story and get the player engaged very quickly. The first act of the game is very strong. It sets up all the major characters that will play a big part in the story. The second act mainly focuses on the bond between Max and Mona. We get that they do love each other and want to be together, but there's also a conflict between them. Mona is a fugitive, Max is a cop, so naturally, they handle situations differently. but in the darkest hour they will put the other before themselves. And the third act wraps up every ongoing storyline in the series and provides a satisfying conclusion to the Max Payne storyline. The way the characters are introduced is really well done too. Vlad doesn't seem like a criminal anymore, and is more interested in his new restaurant.
Scout's honor, detective. I have mended my ways, evolved to a higher level. Vodka will be the best restaurant in the city. I'll be rich and famous.
Which is obviously a facade. Vlad lies about almost everything in the game, but he's so charismatic, and there's the fact that he helped you in the first game, making Max and the player want to believe he's not a backstabber. The famous line,
Max, dearest of all my friends, I was supposed to be the hero.
Isn't even true. He says this to everyone, making them believe they're special to him.
Clay, dearest of all my friends, I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's not to say Vlad doesn't have respect for Max, but it's obvious that he doesn't consider Max the dearest of his friends, as he often says. Their final fight isn't really about morals or power, it's about both of them trying to put an end to this tired battle. Vinny is the same as he's always been, a criminal who doesn't fear anyone except Max. Which makes sense considering how his last encounter with Max went. Vlad also betrays Vinny, and in turn causes a reluctant partnership between Max and Vinny. As the old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Something like that. Max is a detective, but he doesn't play by the books and will use very taboo methods to solve the case, if need be. Vinny is also someone who has a childlike personality. He watches cartoons, and you can even stop in the middle of a level to watch an episode of Captain Baseball Bat Boy with him, which is funny. And then he dies by being blown to bits, showing how ruthless Vlad is.
Ouch. Poor guy. Poor bastard.
Alfred Woden is back, but he's no longer the looming, powerful figure he used to be. He's dying of cancer, and Vlad plans to kill him and take over the inner circle to gain more power over New York. With Winterson. Yep, Winterson was in bed with Vlad and planned to take over New York with him. Winterson gets more and more suspicious as the game goes on, until Max eventually has to choose between siding with her or Mona. Max chooses Mona, but he still feels guilt over Winterson's death. If you look around Winterson's office at the police station, then you can't find anything relating to any of her cases, only things relating to her blind child. Max murdered a mother. Even if he had a good reason for doing so, it still doesn't sit right with him. If you look at Max's office, then he only has things relating to the case, showing that he didn't really have a life outside of the detective work. Winterson did. Neither of them were perfect people. Mona is someone who obviously loves Max, but her job is constantly getting in the way. It's not clear throughout the game as to what she wants. It's revealed that she was working for Vlad all along and was supposed to kill Max, but her love for him got in the way, and Vlad shoots her for it, and also to get payback on Max for killing his lover. You also get to play as Mona, and this helps the player build a connection with her as well. It's also very clear that her and Vlad weren't on the best of terms. The reason why Vlad's arm is bad at the beginning of the game is because of Mona. There's also two endings, one where Mona dies, and one where she lives. You get the second ending by beating the game 3 times. And I think both work for the game's story. With Mona dead, Max has no more ties to his previous life and can move on to a fresh and hopefully better life. He even gets over his dead family in the end.
I had a dream of my wife. She was dead, but it was all right.
Max's old life may be gone, but in that old life dying, he finds himself coming out the other side as a new man. So whilst the ending is bittersweet and does fit the neo-noir style of no happy endings, it isn't really a bad ending either. Max moves on with his life. On the other hand though, the second ending works because Max has experienced nothing but pain and misery for 5 years straight, and the only source of happiness was Mona, and it's clear that Mona would be empty without Max as well. So after everything these two have been through and have experienced, they more than deserve a happy ending.
Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes something good comes out of it. Something you know you wouldn't deserve in a million years.
God, I turned out to be such a damsel in distress.
Something that gives you a reason to go on.
NYPD, freeze! Easy! Don't move! We need a paramedic team here. We have 2 survivors.
Whichever ending you prefer, it's safe to say that Max Payne 2 gave a satisfying conclusion to the character and the story, and didn't need a follow-up. Max Payne 2 is also more subdued than most love stories. It is clear that Max and Mona love each other, but it's not romantic love, and it's not told in the way love stories are typically told in video games. And the way Max's character is handled in this game is extremely well done. Max goes from being an empty nobody with nothing but bullet holes and bodies left behind him, to finding love again in the most unusual of places, to then putting his past behind him and living a better life, all in the span of one game. The amount of depth he is given in this game is matched by very few other characters in this industry, and it's why he's still a beloved character and means so much to people like myself. Not just because he's a badass and poetic character, but also because his journey is unlike anything ever seen in a video game. He also still has the same style of dialogue as the first game, where everything is over-exaggerated and metaphorical.
Fraternizing with the enemy, I had stepped over the edge. The cartoon moment when the gravity waits for the coyote to realize his mistake before the plunge. When you're waking up, the world is a blur. What was clear in a dream suddenly makes no sense. No surreal rescues, no easy, magic way out. But you are awake. Einstein was right. Time is relative to the observer. When you're looking down the barrel of a gun, time slows down. Your whole life flashes by, heartbreak and scars.
And he still has that dry sense of humor.
The circle goes back to the centuries-old Masonic cults. Corruption and assassinations reaching all the way to the presidential level.
Right. And here I was thinking conspiracy theories had gone out of style.
How many characters in gaming could you listen to talk about their philosophy and vision of how they see the world for hours on end? Max has a unique view on any kind of topic, and it always has something interesting to say. Very few characters can achieve that level of intrigue. The comic artwork in this game is better than most comics released today. There are more in-game cutscenes this time around because animation and graphics improved greatly by 2003, but the game still uses comic panels which keep the game timeless. They also use a variety of tracks using these scenes to fit the tone and atmosphere. The nightmare sequences are also a big improvement upon the first game. They did a good job story-wise, but the gameplay of Follow the Blood Trail was kind of annoying. Here, they're just used for story and they show how much Max wants Mona and that he's willing to kill for her. But he also fears the consequences of going down that path, such as being chased by police. He even fears what will happen if the mob war between Vinny and Vlad gets bigger and what casualties will be involved. It also shows that Max can't just live in fantasy and needs to wake up to reality. What is also great about the story in this game is its unpredictability. Plotlines will sometimes have dead ends and characters will double-cross or backstab someone or become allies later on to keep you guessing as to what's going to happen next. The game is also able to make you feel a wide range of emotions over the runtime, such as sadness, nostalgia, remorse, regret, guilt, love, pain, finality. It says a lot when you're so invested in the story and characters, you're able to experience so many different emotions in a game that lasts 4 hours. Everything set up in the game has a payoff. There are also some life lessons you could take from this game, especially if you're someone who has experienced loss in your life. Max learns to move on and not let loss and pain lead him down a dark path of emptiness any longer. If this sad man can find happiness, you sure can. And it's also why Max is a character who's easy to connect to. Sure, not everyone who plays the game is a badass cop who can do cool bullet time tricks and such, but most people in their life will experience things such as loss, emptiness, loneliness, depression, and so forth. It's sad to say, but it's true. And I think many people may find comfort in seeing one of their favorite characters go through the same struggles and come out the other end okay. Max Payne, the game and the character, may have a pessimistic tone, but the themes of the story are anything but pessimistic. During times of sadness for myself, I often replay this game to remind myself that despite what the world may seem like right now, it isn't all doom and gloom. Max Payne 2 is the perfect continuation of Max Payne's story. It expanded upon the characters and gave them more depth whilst keeping what made them so engaging to begin with. The love story is handled maturely and with respect. The game is paced extremely well, everything has a payoff, and no time is wasted. The game deals with deep themes that the player can connect to and will think about long after finishing the game. The main character has one of the best character arcs of all time and some of the best written dialogue ever, and it brought every character's story to a satisfying conclusion. I have zero criticisms with Max Payne 2's story. Even after thinking about this game for a long time, I really cannot think of a single problem with the story in this game. Max Payne 2's story is a masterpiece and should be remembered as one of the best in its medium. In terms of extra content, Max Payne 2 has New York Minute from the first game, though it has been slightly changed. In Max Payne 1, you had a timer that would count down and you had to kill enemies to keep it up. In Max Payne 2, the timer counts up and you have to kill enemies to bring it down. What is cool is that the timer stops during cutscenes, so you can still experience the story whilst playing this mode. There is of course the other difficulty options. Dead on Arrival only allows you to save 5 times. Though, to be honest, I've never really understood the point of other difficulties in both games. The game doesn't really feel much harder on higher difficulties. But still, you do get the extra ending for beating the game 3 times, so there is incentive to do so. You can also change what type of crosshair you have and the color. Small addition, but very nice. The biggest addition is Dead Man Walking, which is a horde mode containing 5 maps from the story mode where you have to survive for as long as possible. I like the addition of this mode because I love the gameplay of Max Payne 1, but if I wanted to experience the gunfights, I'd have to play through the whole game again, unless I made specific save files. Whereas in Max Payne 2, I can boot up the game and start combat right away. I do think a few more maps could have been added, but it's still a nice, fun, and challenging mode. I also wish you had the option to play as Mona in these maps, but thanks to developer keys on the PC version of the game, you can play as any character you want, even Vinny in the baseball bat boy costume. Remedy even added the ability to replay chapters of the game, so if I wanted to replay the $1 million question 900 times, I could. Overall, there's a lot of quality of life improvements, and Dead Man Walking is a fun mode. Though, one of the complaints when Max Payne 2 came out was the lack of content, and this is something I can empathize with. The story in the game is the perfect length for what it is, but imagine back in 2003. You buy this game for $50 or $60 US, then you go back and finish it the same day, and then not have much else to do in the game. Nowadays, this isn't so much of an issue considering how cheap these games are, but I would understand someone being annoyed that they dropped a stack of money on the game and didn't get much longevity from it, even if they did enjoy the game. Although one thing that has added longevity to both games is the insane number of mods. I wish I talked about this more in the Max Payne 1 video, but the mods for these games are insane. There are mods that add more levels to Dead Man Walking, there are mods that add their own campaign levels, mods that revamp and completely change the mechanics of the game, give new weapons, and so on and so forth. It's insane. Some of my favorites are Battle Tactics 2, a turn-based style where you and the enemies take turns killing each other. Elements of Style, which adds the stupidest animations ever and allows you to do crazy stuff. Payne vs. Anderson, where you have a boss fight with Neo from The Matrix. the System Failure, where you get to play as Neo from The Matrix, Cinema, which adds a ton of weapons to the game and has the most 2000 soundtrack ever, DMC, yes, there's a DMC mod for this game that adds Dante's abilities and styles from Devil May Cry 3 and 4. Mona the Assassin, a mod where you get to play as Mona and play through some unique levels for her. But my all-time favourite Max Payne 2 mod is the Vigorously Enhanced mod, which adds lightning and fire powers, sword combat, magic voodoo abilities, a lot of extra weapons, and changes a lot of the game's mechanics to be more stylish. Heck, if you didn't think Max Payne 2 was hard enough, there's a hardcore mod that removes bullet time and makes you die in one hit. There have been so many mods for this game made over the time it's been released, and it's always fun to replay the game because of these. You're always going to get something new. I know this isn't directly a part of the game itself, but it's still worth noting how much the Max Payne community has added to the games in terms of value and longevity. And they're completely free. You can easily get hundreds of hours of content out of these mods. Overall though, Max Payne 2 could have done with a bit more bonus content outside the story mode, as once you finish the game, there's not much else afterwards. Max Payne 1 had a wonderful soundtrack, but for the sequel, Katsuya Taka and Kimo Kagesto really brought their A-game. The characters have their own unique themes that represent who they are. Max's themes are lonely and depressed, usually only containing a few instruments. Mona's themes are ominous and mysterious, making you feel on edge whenever she's around. Vlad's themes are villainous and suspicious, making you feel dread when he appears. The Nightmare theme is haunting, with many distorted and creepy noises ringing out. My personal favourite track in the game is Duty vs. Passion. To me, it captures the feeling of fighting for your life to save what you love. And of course, the rendition of the Max Payne theme is great. It starts off really down and sour, but becomes more uplifting towards the end, just like the game itself. But of course, no video on Max Payne 2 would be complete without talking about Poets of the Fall and their awesome song, Late Goodbye.
And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye, such a late goodbye. And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye.
The singer for the band, Marco Seresto, and Sam Lake were friends for a long time, and thus, when the opportunity to make music for the game came up, Poets were more than applicable for the task. Ever since Max Payne 2, Remedy and Poets of the Fall have continued to collaborate with Alan Wake and Control. And the game helped them become even more popular than they would have on their own. So that's another thing I can thank this game for, introducing this awesome band. I've listened to every Poets of the Fall song and they haven't made a single bad song. My personal favourite is Carnival of Rust. Anyway, Late Goodbye perfectly fits the tone this game is going for, and what's even cooler is that it's an in-universe song. You can hear other characters singing it and playing it throughout the game.
Night, it's a late goodbye. Hey, hey!
And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye, such a late goodbye. And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye.
Meaning that Poets of the Fall canonically exists in the Max Payne universe. The soundtrack for Max Payne 2 is perfect. The characters have unique themes that fit who they are, the music captures different tones and emotions the player will experience when playing the game, and the game helped give birth to one of the greatest bands of all time. Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne, is a wonderful game. It has amazing gameplay that has not been matched by any other third-person shooter, the storytelling is industry-defining, or at least should be, and the music will get you lost in the game in a way very few games can. It's a shame then that Max Payne 2 itself wasn't industry-defining, and is the least played game in the series. It's a masterpiece and should be played by anyone at least once in their lives. Same with the first game. It improved upon the original whilst keeping and continuing what made the first game so damn good. As I said before, there is a reason, well, plenty of reasons, as to why this is my favourite game, and that's never gonna change. Max Payne 2 is the perfect sequel.